They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri. That's Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. We are going to try to make it worth your while. We have quite the NFL-laden show for you this week, so sit down, buckle up, and get ready, because coming up in hour number 2, we are mid-season. It's time for the Benchwarmerz mid-season awards. We're going to give you a mid-season MVP, a mid-season defensive and offensive player of the year, a mid-season rookie of the year, and even a mid-season coach of the year. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be very exciting. We have to look ahead to week 9. The NFL season's already mostly over at this point. That's kind of scary and sad because I don't want it to end. Coming up a little bit later this hour, we have some NFL news to touch on, some stories, highlight of the week, lowlight of the week, and our moral lesson. We have a nice little moral lesson we learn every week from the NFL. But first, we're going to touch on the top 5 news stories according to us. And hopefully you're following along on either the iHeartRadio podcasting app, you're following on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at the Benchwarmerz Podcast. Or you can email us at the Benchwarmerz Podcast at yahoo.com, Benchwarmerz with a Z for marketing purposes. And you can also find us on Twitter at the BW Pod. Now that shameless self-promotion is out of the way, Jose, it's time for the top 5 news stories in the NFL, according to us. So, story number 1, the Pittsburgh Steelers remain unbeaten, knocking off the Ravens. Ravens are now 5-2, and they've lost to the Steelers and the Chiefs. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-0, just like no one predicted in the offseason. So, what's your feeling on the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers through 7 weeks?
The Steelers might be the most balanced team in the NFL right now. You look at them on offense; they're 5th overall in points per game. Defense, they're 6th in points allowed per game. They're number 7 against the pass, number 5 against the run. They've gotten back-to-back wins now against the Titans and the Ravens. Titans were unbeaten last 2 weeks ago, if you remember, and the Ravens only had 1 loss, as you alluded to earlier. It's time to give the Steelers the respect they deserve. I hesitate to say they're the best team in the NFL because I still give that nod and edge to the Kansas City Chiefs until someone knocks them off in the postseason.
Yep.
But the Steelers are right there right now with the Seahawks and the Chiefs as like the top 3 teams in the NFL. And I don't think there's another team in that same category or like in that same tier with those 3. So hats off to the Steelers. They're doing it on both sides of the ball. Big Ben is at the low end of the MVP discussion right now. Nothing but good things to say about them. They look like they're going to be a number 1 or number 2 seed in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and in a season where offense is king, or at least it seems that way, the Steelers come in with a pretty impressive defense. They didn't play incredibly well against the Ravens, but they played well enough. And just their lineup. TJ Watt is a monster. He is watching. I think he could be better than JJ Watt. I really do. That Minkah Fitzpatrick trade looks like a genius move at this point. Joe Hayden, who at one point was arguably the best corner in the league. I mean, we kind of forget that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bud Dupree's their other outside linebacker, and he's unbelievable. They're just up from top to bottom. I mean, there's not a whole lot of names outside of maybe Fitzpatrick and Watt that you'd recognize, but they just gel and they just play with an intensity that, that Pittsburgh has honestly been known for over the years. It's just, it's hard to believe. I guess it goes to show if Ben's healthy, this team is hard. They're hard to beat. And the Ravens need some offense.
Yeah, they look very limited on offense. And just to cap off what you said, the Steelers, they also have an experienced head coach. They have kind of all the ingredients that you need to make a deep playoff run. But the Ravens, I don't really know exactly what's going on. Like, I don't want to make this comparison so quickly, but it's starting to remind me of Colin Kaepernick post Super Bowl.
I was just gonna say
like
that.
just
oh my God, yes,
it's just starting to remind me of a guy who's obviously a tremendous athlete, and Lamar Jackson, obviously one of the best athletes in the NFL, but it just feels like their passing game is very limited. And until that passing game opens up and becomes a little bit more efficient, I just don't know what they're going to do against really good teams. When they're playing against a team that they can jump out to a 21-0 lead or 21-10 lead, then it's all gravy. But when they're playing against a team that's either going to keep pace with them or even score more than them, they just don't seem to have the pieces right now. It feels like they've taken a step back offensively, and that's not good because I'm not even sure that they're the third best team in the conference right now. So it's not looking good for the Ravens.
Yeah, I would agree. And Colin Kaepernick is the exact same thing that I thought of when I was watching this game, because it feels like Lamar Jackson is in danger of becoming a one-trick pony, or to be thought of as a one-trick pony, because he still might be one of the fastest people in the league, but it's starting to look like, I mean, when we're getting a bigger and bigger sample size, that it's just what you said. I don't think that, maybe it's not just him, maybe it's the team in general, but when they're behind, it feels like that they kind of panic to catch up, and they don't have the offensive weapons to do so. I mean, Hollywood Brown's not doing much. I mean, Willie Snead is a highlight player for you guys. Like, Willie Snead got jettisoned by 2 teams now, I think. And Mark Andrews is your number one he's your number one receiver at this point.
Yeah.
There's nobody you're really scared of on that offense aside from Lamar Jackson. I mean, even the running game has been okay. It's not.
And we thought they were going to be explosive coming into the year. That's the thing, because Lamar Jackson threw 36 touchdown passes last year. This looked like a team that was headed to. I mean, we were like, this is just scratching the surface. We're expecting them to explode this year, and they really just didn't. And it kind of just feels like you said, when they get up, they don't have an offense that they just. When other teams get behind, they just run their offense. Hey, let's just run our offense. Let's just put up points on the board. It doesn't feel like the Ravens have that fallback. Let's just run our offense. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I would agree. I think that they're, for a team that's 5-2, it feels like they're in trouble, which is strange to say, but it's just, it's funny how perspective kind of comes into play, and you sort of put things in context.
It's also about their goals. They're not just trying to make the playoffs. This is a team trying to win the Super Bowl, so that's why they're in trouble.
Agreed. And another team trying to win the Super Bowl is our second news story, our second of the top 5 news stories of the week. The Saints also improved to 5-2 with a hard-fought victory on the overtime against the Bears. The Saints are an interesting team, and so are the Bears. I can't quite figure out either one of them, because every time I feel like I we either write off the Saints too quickly, or we give the Bears too much. Obviously, I gave the Bears way too much credit last week because I thought they were going to be competitive against the Rams, and the Rams just made them look stupid. And the Saints, maybe it's because Michael Thomas hasn't been there. Maybe it's because Emmanuel Sanders really hasn't been there. Maybe I'm not sure. Their defense feels like it's not quite as good as it should be. But they're winning, I guess. So it doesn't, you are what your record says you are. But this game, I wouldn't have been surprised if the Bears beat them soundly.
Yeah, I think it's what happens. You're comparing. I think the problem is that we're comparing them to other teams that are just destroying. You look at the Seahawks; they're just crushing teams. The Chiefs are just crushing teams. The Steelers, in some sense, they're just. It doesn't feel like they have. Even at some point earlier this season, the Packers were just crushing teams, and it doesn't feel like the Chiefs are really doing that. And so they haven't really looked dominant at any stretch, at any point during this season. They haven't looked like a dominant football team. It looks like they're just skating by, and I do think it's a lot of it is not having Michael Thomas. I mean, really all Drew Brees does is drop back and throw it to Alvin Kamara, who seems to be wide open all the time. I don't understand what the defenses are doing. Like, you really trying to stop Jared Cook from beating you? Like, get over there, triple team Alvin Kamara, and make them beat you some other way. I just don't understand it. Listen, I'm not a defensive coordinator, so perhaps there's some nuance and understanding about how do you guard this guy. Just I just don't understand how he's wide open all the time. But either way, I digress. The Saints, they're getting it done. It's just not pretty. 3-point victory over the Bears, 3-point victory over the Panthers, 3-point victory over the Chargers. These three teams don't look like, no one's looking at the Bears, Panthers, or Chargers as teams that are going to do anything serious. Really, the only big win that the Saints have had was Week 1 against the Bucks, which is, at this point, it's kind of hard to take that win seriously because the Bucks have been playing better.
Yeah, and Week 1 is just full of surprises.
And as far as the Bears, they are who I thought they were. I mean, they are a team that has to win on defense. On offense, they're averaging 20.1 points per game. You look at that, it's just not going to get it done. The Jets, the Giants, the Washington football team, and the Patriots are the only 4 teams that are averaging fewer points per game than the Chicago Bears.
It was interesting to see Mitch Trubisky out there this week for a little while. And, I started wondering about that. I wonder when teams, maybe it's Chicago, but teams that are going to start utilizing a 2-quarterback set, like where the Saints almost started doing it with Taysom Hill. And then with Drew Brees, because I feel like that's part of the problem with the Saints is that we keep sort of prematurely burying Drew Brees' career, and we keep, we do the same to Tom Brady. It's like everybody wants to write the epitaph before the guy dies, and we keep wanting to kind of like throw him out and start over and get the new story. But he's still a great quarterback. Maybe he's not the best quarterback in the league anymore. Maybe Tom Brady's not either, but they're still playing at a very high level, and I think that it's easy to kind of overlook someone like that because we've seen it for so long. You almost get desensitized. Like, oh yeah, okay. Well, they ran down the field, in overtime to kick a field goal, whatever. It's fine. But the Bears, yeah, you and Dennis Green, they are who they thought who you thought they were. So that was, oh man, that's one of the best sound clips of all time. We'll see though. Yeah, I'm wondering if the Bears are going to be the first team to start doing that, where you take two kind of. I mean, just think if you had a guy like Lamar Jackson, and then you had a guy like, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, obviously that would be insane, but to have a defense to have to prepare for both skill sets of those players would just be, you would think that would have to be a nightmare. But some salary cap issues obviously come into play, so yeah. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we'll see. It might, maybe we'll see. But okay. Our third story, top five news stories of the week. The Buffalo Bills, and arguably this could be the number one, really. Buffalo Bills take control of the NFC East. They finally beat the AFC East, yeah. They beat the Patriots. They're 6-2. And the Dolphins, by the way, as a caveat to the story, the Dolphins, who put a beat down on the Rams, are now in second place at 4-3, which leaves the Patriots at a historically bad 2-5 through 8 weeks. And of course, the Jets are sitting at I think I saw on the cover of the Star Ledger today, it said, "Woe and 8. What are the chances the Jets go undefeated or they go winless?" The answer to that question, by the way, is 21% percentage. 21%
is that really?
Chance. Yeah.
Is that low?
I looked it up. Yeah, I know.
It should be much higher than that.
Yeah, they have a 79% chance of basically accidentally winning a game. So that's where it is. So the Bills, I was happy to see the Bills win. I felt like this is sort of the Bills Super Bowl in a way. So I'm hoping that they don't get too full of themselves and forget about next week's game. But, I mean, what can you say about the Patriots? I mean, James White was basically their number one receiver for the most part, aside from Jacoby Myers. Cam, I don't know. I've said before, I'll say it again. I think Cam is pretty overrated because he's not a very accurate passer, combined with the fact that the Patriots receiving core, especially now without Julian Edelman, is pathetic. Isn't even like a good. I mean, that's a compliment at this point. So,
yeah, look, the Cam Newton's got 2 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions this season. That's I mean, that's beyond bad. That's putrid. That's not even a starting level NFL quarterback, which obviously the Carolina Panthers knew that he wasn't a starting NFL quarterback. That's why they let him go. Just to talk about the Bills quickly before we start bashing on the Patriots, I'm very happy for the Bills. They kind of knocked their little brother, the big brother, in the mouth.
Yep.
Finally, looks like they're going to get the division win. I'm ecstatic for them. I still don't really think that they're a great team, but you listen, it's baby steps. Right now, you've got Josh Allen playing well. You can go ahead and make the playoffs. Maybe you can get a win, and then you can start building for the future and trying to get even better and trying to get further. You would imagine Josh Allen can only get better. As far as the Dolphins, I'm not really sure what to say about them other than they've been surprisingly good. But I think they already have a loss against the Patriots earlier this season. They have a loss against the Bills, kind of like what we said earlier in the offseason, that the Bills need to beat the Patriots for us to kind of get on board. The Dolphins need to beat the Bills and the Patriots for us to really start believing that they're a good team. This was a good step because I don't think anyone picked the Dolphins to beat the Rams. So it's a good step. I think it might be more of a sign that the Rams are a little bit overrated to start this season. And listen, the Patriots just haven't been making good draft picks. If you look at it, in the last few years, the Patriots haven't made good draft picks. They were kind of whiffed on Sony Michel. Big whiff on N'Keal Harry.
Yep.
They've got no one on offense. Their defense is good, but not elite. It just, I don't know. I don't really know where they go from here. You can't win forever. At some point, this was going to happen. It seems like this is the year where it's happening.
And the Dolphins, the Dolphins, they're having trouble against the AFC East, but they seem to be just slowly picking apart the NFC West. And they almost beat the Seahawks. They put a beat down on your 49ers, and then they just smacked around the Rams.
And they get the Cards this coming week.
So we'll see if they can try to go three for 4. That's pretty good. But the Dolphins, Tua didn't play well. Not that I expected him to. He played better than I thought he was going to, up against Aaron Donald for his first game. I thought that he looked kind of small, and his arm strength. I was actually surprised by the lack of arm strength, at least from what I was seeing. And maybe I'm not sure if that's maybe perception, but some of the other guys that we see, like Justin Herbert. Obviously he's 6 inches taller and probably 40 pounds heavier. But you watch him throw the ball, then you watch Tua throw the ball, and it's like, whoa, what?
Yeah,
it's not even like, are you guys in the same league or what? But we'll see. Good for the Dolphins. Their defense stepped up in a big way, and the Rams are an enigma. I don't understand. It's like one week they look like they could be the best team in the league, and then the next week they look like they could be the worst team in the league. It's just,
that's a sign of a not very good team. That's really
is
what
it
that
though?
is.
It's an inconsistent team, so I'm not sure if that means that they're bad, but it does means they're not good. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're bottom of the barrel, but when you're a good team, when you're a top 10, top 5 type team, you're good basically every week.
Yeah,
you might have 1 or 2 stinkers because almost no one goes undefeated, as we know. But you're not gonna be like doing with the Rams. The Rams have shown me that they're not a very good team. They're not a bad team. They're going to be a team that probably wins around 9, maybe 10 games.
Yeah. But speaking of the Dolphins beating the Rams, the fourth news story of the week, the four of our top 5 stories this week, is basically a compilation of upsets. The Dolphins obviously beating the Rams like we just talked about. The Titans losing to the Bengals. What? And then the Packers just getting slapped around by the Vikings. We kind of touched on the Dolphins-Rams, but what were your thoughts on Titans getting smacked around by the Bengals, and then the Packers it looked like they didn't even show up to play the Vikings?
I'm going to say I was most alarmed by the Packers losing. The Vikings, they had just lost not the Vikings. The Titans had just lost the week earlier to the Steelers. I wouldn't say that I was expecting the Bengals to win, but the Bengals have been looking like a team that has been getting better and better each week. And it just seemed like they just things clicked this week. And we've been saying from the beginning that the Titans offense, while it's okay, that was one of the things we were hesitant about earlier this season when we were talking about the Titans, that we just weren't sure how good they could be on a week in and week out basis. And I think we saw that this week where they just didn't look good on offense. And the Bengals have been moving the ball and scoring points on offense pretty well. the Vikings beating the Packers and at Lambeau Field, that's because the score is 28-22. It felt like it was not that close.
It was not that close. That's a lot of garbage time.
And then 2 weeks ago they got destroyed by the Buccaneers 38-10. And you kind of they had a win against the Texans sandwiched in between there, but the Texans have one win, so that doesn't. It just kind of feels like, okay, now you've lost 2 out of 3. You're going to San Francisco on Thursday. Now the 49ers are all beat up, but it's just tough to pick them to. Is this the old Packers coming back? Is this last year's Packers coming back? That's kind of what keeps creeping up in my mind. Very, very discouraging loss by the Packers.
Yeah, I think the Vikings seem to have found the formula. They limited Kirk Cousins to 14 pass attempts. He went 11 of 14 for 160 yards and a touchdown, which is about what you expect out of Kirk Cousins. And the Vikings let Dalvin Cook 30 carries, 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, he had 2 receptions for another 63 yards and another touchdown. So obviously, we talk about Alvin Kamara, but it's like at some point the Packers like, hey man, why don't you go stop that guy who's just destroying us single-handedly? And then for the Packers, I mean, it's the same old thing. It's we're all on board for the Packers looking good, and Devontae Adams catches 3 touchdowns, and no one else does basically anything. Robert Tonyan had more receiving yards, but it's basically Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams just trying to beat teams at this point. And I keep saying it. I know that there's rumors that the Packers are going to pick up Will Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but he'll be he's going to play for 3 games and then get injured again. So I don't even know why they're bothering with somebody who's that injury prone. But it's hard to say. The Packers. It felt like watching that game. It just felt like the Packers didn't even really show up. Like they just They just kind of were going through the motions. I don't know if that's you put that on Aaron Rodgers or the coaching staff or what, but it just felt like all they did was just hand the ball off to Williams over and over and over again. And if that didn't work, it's like they didn't have another plan. It was just, well, we're just going to keep giving it to Jamal Williams, and he's going to get 4.7 yards a carry, which is good, but he's not going to do much else than that. And then we don't know what else to do once that doesn't work.
The good thing the Packers are still 5-2. As we talked about with the Ravens. You don't want to overreact, but it's just you can't really have a much more discouraging loss losing to a 1-win team.
A 1-win division rival, like your biggest division rival, too. I mean, it's not good.
No.
And the Titans Bengals, I mean,
I was more surprised with how well the Bengals on offense played. I'm looking at the numbers right now. The Titans actually weren't awful on offense. Derrick Henry had 112 yards rushing. Ryan Tannehill had 2 touchdown passes, but you gave up 31 points to the Bengals. That's really what happened there.
Yeah, and the Bengals. I mean, Joe Burrow, another 37 pass attempts. I mean, he had one little scramble. I don't know if you saw it or not, but he had a scramble where he evaded like 2 separate tackles to avoid 2 different sacks on the same drop back, and then ended up running for positive yardage. And for somebody that we don't think of as like a mobile quarterback, I mean, not that he's immobile, but we won't really attribute that skill set to him. I mean, he just found a way, and that seemed like the whole game where he just kind of made things happen, and the team responded. And what else can you ask for? I mean, for a team that's 2-5-1, they feel like the best 2-5-1 team I've ever seen. So.
Yeah, and the Titans, in losing that game, opened the door for the Colts in this division, because the Titans, just 2 weeks ago, they were undefeated and looking like they might run away with the division, and here they are tied with the Colts at 5-2. So this is a pretty bad loss for the Titans.
And speaking of the Colts beating the Lions to go 5-2, that is the 5th of our top 5 stories of the week. Like I said, the Colts beat the Lions, and they're tied for the AFC South division lead with the aforementioned Titans. Yeah, and the Colts are interesting. I don't know what to say about the Colts.
Well, listen, early in the season, I was all about the Colts. In the offseason, I thought they were going to be dark horse Super Bowl contenders. Then they show up in week 1 and lose to the Jaguars. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like what have I done? What did I predict? And then since then, it seems like they've righted the ship a little bit. But really, when you look at the Colts record, and we're going to learn something about the Colts over the next 4 weeks. They play the Ravens next week, the Titans the week after that, the Packers the week after that, and then the Titans again. So the next 4 weeks, we're going to really see just how good the Colts are. But, I mean, and I'll just go ahead and give our stat of the week here with Phillip Rivers. Listen, he had 6 touchdown passes, and he's had, over the last 2 games, he's had 6 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. And so this is his first time. I'm sorry, it was Rivers' second consecutive game with at least 3 touchdown passes. And so it was the first time he's had consecutive games with at least 3 passing touchdowns since weeks 1 and 2 of 2018. And his 6 passing touchdowns over the last 2 games is more than he had 6 touchdown passes over the last 2 games after having only 4 passing touchdowns in the first 5 games this season. So Rivers is playing better. The Colts are being better.
Just took an old dog a little while to learn some new tricks. Maybe he's finally rounding into form.
They just haven't played anyone good though, so we'll see.
He has the longest active starting streak, by the way, 224 games of starts. So he's moving right along and climbing up that ladder towards. Right now, I think that's 5th in history, but he's the longest active. So
yeah.
I mean, we'll see how much longer he goes, but
I mean, the thing is, and we all know that at some point, Phillip Rivers, like, he's going to rear his ugly head. At some point, it's going to be a tie game in the 4th quarter. The Colts are going to have a chance to win, and he's going to throw a critical interception. At some point, it's going to happen, but at least right now, we can enjoy that they're 5-2.
Or 3 critical interceptions because he tends to throw them punches, but we'll see. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come right back. We have a couple more news items to touch on. We have to go through our highlight of the week, low of the week, and we have a moral lesson that we're going to share with you. So stick around. We have that and a little bit more coming up on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz, and this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. Appreciate taking some time to spend it with us. Big hour number 2 coming up shortly. We have our mid-season Benchwarmers awards: MVP, Defensive, Offensive Players of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year. Well, not of the year, of the half year, I guess is what I should say. We have to make some week 9 picks. Sorry, we're in week 8. We're going to touch on week 9. And we just touched on the top 5 stories in the NFL according to us. And now we have a little bit of news to get to, and then we have to go to our highlight, low light of the week, and the moral lesson we learned this week from the NFL. So, big news, not a whole lot of news, but some interesting things. The biggest of the big is Antonio Brown gets traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I mean, it's not the moral lesson because we already used it, but the rich getting richer. I mean, it looks like the Bucks are all in, and if this works. I mean, can you think of a scarier receiving core if all 3 of those wide receivers are healthy?
No, it would definitely be the best receiving core in football. I just I don't think it's a bad move. I just don't know if that's really what they needed. To me, like when I looked at that team, I didn't think, oh man, they're a wide receiver short from being good. I didn't think they maybe. I don't know. It just felt like an unnecessary move. But I guess if you can add Antonio Brown and he's even 80% of what he was, then you have another offensive weapon. But they seemed like they didn't really need it. Just kind of, like you said, rich getting richer, I suppose.
Well, I think that in a way that it made sense because, Chris Godwin has been he's played maybe half the year, if that.
Yeah.
He's been injury prone this year with concussions and injuries and everything. Mike Evans was a little banged up early in the year. They did lose O.J. Howard for the year, which is unfortunate. So I think part of this is not only that, maybe the thinking is, well, if Chris Godwin's not going to be hurt, or if he's not going to be available and he's going to be hurt, how can we fill that void? I mean, you can only fill that talent void with someone who is super talented. And as far as we know, despite all his off the field antics, Antonio Brown is probably still pretty good by all accounts. So
yeah. I mean, he's going to step on the field. He hasn't played in over a year. I'm not sure what to expect from Antonio Brown. You would have to imagine he's still going to be one of their top 2 or 3 receivers. So it's not a bad move. It's just surprising to me.
And the other strategic thing that I thought of is a lot like what the Chiefs did with Le'Veon Bell. It's like, basically, we're going to sign him because, Brady's relationship with him obviously is pretty good, stemming back to last year with the one game he played with the Patriots. But it's not just to make us better. It's to take him away from a potential rival like the Seahawks or even like the Chiefs. I mean, imagine that, if the Chiefs got him opposite Tyreek Hill. I mean, the Seahawks are humming along on offense. And if they got Antonio Brown opposite DK Metcalf and then Tyler Lockett as their slot guy, I mean, that's a dangerous receiving corps. So maybe it's just to keep him away from everyone else, we're going to sign him.
That's a good point. It also could be like the Packers to another team in that division, or the Saints for that matter, who can't keep a wide receiver healthy right now. So that's a great point. I didn't even think about that. Great point.
So we'll see. I mean, and truthfully, I mean, I hope that it works. I think the NFL is better when Antonio Brown is playing because he's such a spectacular talent. I just hope that he gets help dealing with all his off the field issues, whatever they may be. But I'd like to see him and Tom kind of have that chemistry that they started to develop last year. But so that being said, the other big news item this week is that the NFL trade deadline, is on Tuesday, tomorrow. And so I kind of wanted to just do a little bit of an NFL wish list, because generally the NFL trade deadline is not super exciting. Things happen in the offseason more so than at the deadline. But, we never know. There might be something that shows up. So I'm curious. I know one of my top wish list items is to see Julio Jones go to the Packers, because I think they're going nowhere, and the Packers should give up whatever the Falcons want is what the Packers should give them. Because granted, Julio Jones, I think, is 31 years old, so obviously he's getting a little long in the tooth in receiver years, but he's still dominant, and he's better than everyone else in that receiving core except for possibly Devontae Adams. So I think that would put the Packers on that next level and give Aaron Rodgers a little bit more to do than just look to see where Devontae Adams is running around on the field.
Well, it's certainly given them a much more explosive offense at the very least, and that's kind of what they need, especially with the way that defense is getting run on. My wish list was also my top wish list person was also a wide receiver. I was looking at Mike Evans, and I feel like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they don't seem to prioritize him in targets on the team right now. So I thought maybe they could trade him to the Philadelphia Eagles, who seem to be desperate for anyone to play wide receiver for them and remain healthy. I just think it would be nice to see him and kind of be a number one target someplace. So that's
Wow, I thought I was gonna guess that you're number one. It's the one I didn't take, but I thought maybe it would be up there for you. But I think Matt Ryan to the 49ers right now. Be fantastic for the sake. I mean, to reunite with Kyle Shanahan and get a, I think it's. I would say that Matt Ryan is a much better quarterback at this point than Jimmy Garoppolo, especially
absolutely
career in totality. But even just this year alone, it looks just from the eye test. I know the Falcons are in the toilet, but Matt Ryan looks like he's got plenty of zip left on the ball.
No, Matt Ryan's great. It's more so that, this is just another admission. I don't think the 49ers are going to be a playoff team this year, so I don't want to give up a first round or a second round pick to get Matt Ryan so he can throw to our third string wide receiver and our second string tight end and our fourth string running back. And with multiple defenders missing, and then traded Quan Alexander. It just this 49ers team looks like an average team. And I don't think that certainly in addition at the quarterback position, if anything, I'd be like, go trade for Aaron Donald or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think offensive at the quarterback is going to make a bunch of difference anyway.
I think that it's interesting that it goes to show you, the franchise and the sort of organizational structure that a team has. Because you look at the 49ers with basically their third string lineup still look better than the Jets starters at this point. And I think that that's just so telling that it's almost embarrassing. I mean, it is embarrassing.
Yeah.
The last one I'll do is my wish list for the NFL trade deadline. I'd like to see J.J. Watt go to the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, man, you're trying to create a super team.
Not really. I'm just trying to create a team that doesn't leak like a sieve on defense. And I'd like to see, J.J. Watt's one of those guys. He's kind of got that Larry Fitzgerald, persona where it's like, dude, he's been just languishing on a good but not great team for a long time. And it just is like, I'd like to see him go someplace where he can have a real at winning a Super Bowl. And it just doesn't feel like, last year it seemed like that was the closest they were going to come, and they were up 24-0 on the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs remembered to play, and then they doubled up their score and scored 50 in the second half. So I'd like to see JJ on a true contending team.
Okay.
And I think the Seahawks need defensive help. They need anything on defense. They can get.
Absolutely.
Why not? If you can get him to make a couple big plays, basically do what they wanted Jadeveon Clowney to do last year. But yeah, that's our. Did you have any others that were?
No. I was looking at Zeke. I trying to figure out where it would be cool for Ezekiel Elliott to get traded to see if he's actually.
You could trade back to Ohio State. That'd be fine with me. Get either Justin Fields or get a draft pick or something. But
I was kind of actually looking at the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
If somehow the Bills, because listen, I don't like to talk badly about players, but Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, they don't look like top end starting running backs.
Yeah.
And in fairness, Ezekiel Elliott hasn't looked like a top end starting running back in the last few games, but he's also most of the time, unless your name is Barry Sanders, when you're on a terrible offense, you don't look like a great running back. Like most of the time, good running backs aren't on bad teams.
Yeah.
It usually just doesn't, that's Dalvin Cook as an example in CMC, but Ezekiel Elliott is a player who's used to being on at least a decent offense, and this offense is maybe one of the worst we've seen in quite some time. And I think that if you were on the Buffalo Bills, if they could work out a package to get Ezekiel Elliott over there, that would save the Cowboys some money. They could then maybe draft a running back in this offseason. You franchise Dak Prescott. You see what you have in one more year, see if he's healthy. And you start, I don't want to say start the rebuild, but you kind of start reloading because we've seen that you don't really need to hold on to these running backs for that long. And if you could get a first round or a second round pick from the Buffalo Bills, who I think would be instantly improved by adding Ezekiel Elliott, and in a conference where they need to improve because the Chiefs, Steelers are clearly better than they are. I don't think that would be a bad move.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. I don't know Zeke. Zeke just doesn't look like he's. Well, we'll get to him a little.
He's not very engaged right now. I think there's something to him being a little like, why am I even out here playing? We're terrible, which is not a good. It's not a good mentality to have, obviously.
Well, it looks more like he's out there saying, "I'm not playing." And screw it, I got paid, so I don't care anymore. Is what it looks like to me. But that's also speaking as somebody who's been heartbroken by the Cowboys for a number of years now. So,
okay.
All right, let's move on to our highlight of the week, our low light of the week, and then we have a quick moral lesson we're going to talk about. So, my highlight of the week this week is the Buffalo Bills finally getting over that hump. It felt like almost like that scene where Steve Young finally won the Super Bowl, and he has that iconic scene where he's like, somebody take this monkey back, and they sort of they mime the whole thing. It felt
my
like
favorite
Bills,
moments in football history.
Of course, yeah, of course, and it's fantastic. It's such a great moment because everybody. I feel like everybody kind of felt bad for Steve Young for the most part. Because you're like, come on, man, like that sucks having to, follow a living legend. But the Bills finally getting over that, 20-25 year hump of beating the Patriots in, granted it's just a regular season game, but I felt like it was more symbolic than that. It felt like it's finally the tide is turning in the Bills' favor, and this might be the start of a new chapter in the AFC East.
Yeah, that's a solid pick, and then I would have picked them, but I kind of wanted to touch on a team that we hadn't really talked about so far from Week 8. How about Drew Lock pulling out the last-second win over the Chargers? Drew Lock had been getting a lot of heat this season about not being a good quarterback, kind of being a bust, even though he was a second-round pick. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, comes from behind in the second half after giving a fiery speech at halftime. And he hadn't had a touchdown. I don't know if people realize this. He had, up until this week, he had his first touchdown pass since September 14th. So it's gone basically more than a month without a touchdown pass. So it was good to see them get a win. I was very, very happy. I love when these underdog quarterbacks kind of get a nice win and get their moment in the sun. So I was very happy for Drew Lock in the Broncos.
Yep, it's a good one. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. My low light of the week is just the perpetual list of injuries for the 49ers.
Yeah.
And this, it just goes to show, the injury bug bites, and it bites hard. I mean, this week, Tevin Coleman's listed as doubtful. He hurt his knee. Dante Pettis is questionable. Deebo Samuel's out. Jimmy Garoppolo is out. He's going to miss the next 6 weeks.
Yep.
George Kittle out, broken bone of his foot, 8 weeks. Kiko Alonso, Tart is out. I mean, they're just, I don't know they're like the Philadelphia Eagles of the West. I mean, it's crazy. They just can't. Their entire team is just, their starting team is basically out on either IR or short-term IR. It's crazy.
And I know we were talking earlier. I don't know if we said this on air or not, but I'm not in favor of tanking at all.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see Jimmy Garoppolo the rest of this season. I don't want to see George Kittle the rest of this season. Like, I'm not saying, listen, if all of a sudden,
so 4-4, you're giving up.
I'm not giving up, but look, there's 6 weeks out. 6 weeks. What are the chance? Listen, if in 6 weeks the 49ers are 10-4 or 10-4 because we've gone on a 6-game winning streak, or we're in playoff position, fine, bring the guys back in. I'm just not expecting this is no offense to Nick Mullins or Ross Dwelly or J. Michael Hasty. I'm not expecting the 49ers to, in 6 weeks, be at or above 500. I think in 6 weeks from now, it's more likely there'll be something like 6 and sorry, my math is 6 and 8, or something like that. And I just, at this point, I'm just like, so you're going to bring him back for the 15th game? I just kind of feel like, and then George Kittle out 8 weeks, that's the season.
Yeah.
So it just kind of feels like at this point, you still go out there and trying to compete. You still see what you have with the rest of your roster, but I don't want to see those guys back out there. And I just kind of want to go, but you regroup this season and you go look for a better draft pick. Go look for and trying to win the draft next year. It just didn't work out this year with all the different injuries. It's hard to continually overcome them. We'll see what happens on Thursday night against the Packers, but I'm not expecting good things. My low light of the week was the Browns versus the Raiders. Just the entire game. The Raiders won the game. I think it was 16-6.
Yeah, it was a really bad game.
Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield combined for 234 yards passing and 1 touchdown.
Jeez.
I feel like it set football back about 40 years watching that game. So yeah, it's just my low light of the week. I wanted to touch on 2 other teams that we hadn't talked about. The Raiders were one of the ugliest games you'll watch. So
yeah, and the moral lesson this week, I wanted to kind of, I thought of this came to mind. Speak softly and carry a big stick, and you will go far. And that's from Teddy Roosevelt, talking about a century ago. And this relates to me. It related to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, very quietly, has had thrown for 2,300 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And no one has even batted an eye about that because we're so caught up in the let Russ cook nonsense and Russell Wilson for MVP this year, and Aaron Rodgers making a comeback, Tom Brady with the Bucs and that rejuvenation career. that, quietly we're like, oh, we just kind of wrote off the defending Super Bowl champions because, Patrick Mahomes, we're comparing Patrick Mahomes against Patrick Mahomes. And if you remember last year, he only threw for 26 touchdowns. He's at 21 right now. And then the year before that, he threw for 50, and that sort of set the bar way too high. So, if he throws for 42 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, prorating half a season, that's incredible. He's on it's an historic pace, for just a career year, and no one is even breathing a word of it. And it's they're very quietly just kind of going about their business. It's almost like they're okay with kind of being not the center of the attention of the league right now. They're just kind of like, yep, no, Seattle's great. Yep. Ravens, cool. Titans, Steelers, yep, you guys are all good. Bucks, go Bucks. And they're just like, we're just going to keep playing our games and keep winning. And it's just, it seems like they're, when they turn it on, because it feels like we haven't seen them at their best yet, which is frightening this year.
We've been spoiled by their greatness.
Right.
Yeah. So that's basically what it is. We've been spoiled by their greatness, and like I said, they're still the best team in the NFL until someone proves it wrong.
Yeah, I agree. So that's our moral lesson for the week, and that is going to do it for the first hour of the show. We're going to come back in just a minute with hour number 2. We have to go through week 9 picks and go play our Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, our sports bet line, and kind of recap our records thus far in both of those things. But coming up next, we have our midseason awards. We're going to go through MVP, Defensive and Offensive Players of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and give you our choices for midseason awards. So stick around, and we're going to come right back on the Benchwarmers podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.